Alright, in the last video we did a little introduction to variables, and we talked about you want variables in your game because variables allow things to change. So some important things that we hold variables, we use variables for our score, or maybe if you want a player's name so you can put him in the tie score. Other things that change in games a lot, lives, health, those kinds of things, those are all going to be data that you want to store in a variable so that it can change. So here I made my integer score because my scores can only be whole numbers. And I've made my player, a name for my player. And so I declared them, and then I've tried to print them out. So let's see what happens when I build this. So this is a mistake that you see often. So player was declared but never used. That's just a warning, but here is a red, all right? So we're trying to print out score, but we never, remember how I said we had to declare it and initialize it? Here we never initialized it. So I'm going to initialize it right here and start at 0. And I was actually going to print out player instead of, but that also hasn't been initialized. So let's say player equals red. So these are happening in the start, so they only happen once, right? So this will only happen once, and if I build it, then we know what will happen. If we print this out, we're going to get a score equals num equals 0, score now equals 0, and player equals name equals Fred. Okay. Now, but I want to update my score a lot, right? So something that happens every frame, maybe I want the score to be updated, printed over and over, etc. So I'm going to put it in update. All right. So I'm going to say score, and I'm just going to update it to 10. All right. And then I want to print it out again, so I'll get a copy of this, and I'll put it here. All right, and build. It says the name score doesn't exist in the current context. You're like, but wait. Score is right here. All right. Well, the thing is, variables, so computers are very picky about their memory. You know, it's very important to them. So they don't want variables sitting around that aren't being used anymore. So every variable has a scope. So a scope is how long it's going to be used. How long is it available for? So a variable will live within the curly brackets that it's made. So this variable here, score, was made right here, declared right here. So inside these curly brackets. So as soon as this end curly bracket happens, that variable score is gone. It doesn't live anymore. Its scope doesn't exist. So when we come down here to update, it doesn't exist anymore. All right. Common mistake is we could put int score on there, and we could build it again. And now that error went away. But what have we done? We have a score here, and now we have a new score here. They're not the same. So you would have, this score would be different than this score here. And that may not work well for your game. Okay, so if I want the score to be usable within my whole class and all the methods in my class, instead of doing this, what I need to do is I need to make my score, declare my score as a whole class variable, which means I'm going to put it up here. And let's put this down here so we can see this better. So now this curly bracket is where it's made in, and it's going to last until the end of that curly bracket, which is down here. So any of the methods in this class can use score. Now, if I build it, it will build fine. But look, I put int score here and score here. That means, and do this int, that means that's a new score. That's a different score. All right. So what would happen? If I put score 10 here, And then I put score 0 here, and then I try to print out the score. Alright, let's build it and run it. What do you think is going to run? Score 10, score 10, score 10. Let's pause it. What happened at the very beginning? First a 0, then a 10, and now 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. Okay, but we did get 1 0. Right? So it was 10 at first, but then we got a 0 because we changed it to 0. But this score here is a different score because we put a new int on there. So we only want to use the int once. I see that as one of the biggest mistakes my students make. Redeclaring variables that they do not actually want to make a new one, they just want to make. So, and you notice the update went over and over and over. Alright, do not redeclare variables. Instead, you want to make sure you're declaring your variables within a scope that you want to use. Alright, in summary, also this scope here for a variable that's only good for a single method like that, that is called a local variable. That's a local variable to start. This one here that's available to the whole class would be called a class variable. And let me show you one more thing. Then we file, and we save, and then we go to Unity, and let's look at our object. Let's see, let's run it. Alright, it's running 10.5. So here we are running that script, and if I look over here in script, it says variable scripts here, and I don't see the variable score here. Now that is because sometimes we're going to want access to that score in our editor, but by default all variables are made private. So we can do something to make a variable have more access, basically global access, if we call it public. So I'm going to change my variable to public and save it. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to look at it here again when we run it. And let's look at it. Now it has a score variable in here in the script. And we could actually change it right here if we wanted. Now, remember, if I change it while the game's running, nothing will happen. If you want, or it won't save, is what I meant to say. You have to save it in that mode for it to save. And because my script turned it back to 10, it went back to 10. But I'll show you some ways we'll be using that in the future.